In the year 1886, along the fog-shrouded coast of the Oregon Territory, Isabel Rowe was 28 years old and stood with nothing but her husband's old threadbare coat wrapped around her shoulders, a worn carpet bag holding 2 changes of clothes, his brass pocket watch, a small sewing kit, and $9 folded inside a handkerchief. The settlement of Misty Point had cast her out after her husband's death at sea. Victor Lang, who owned the largest shipping company and controlled the harbor trade, decided her small cabin and the quiet way she helped the widows of lost sailors threatened his plans to claim the coastal land. With debts she could not pay and no family left, she sold what little she had and walked the cliff path until she reached the abandoned lighthouse standing alone on the rocky point. No one wanted the tall stone tower or the crumbling keeper's cottage. The new lighthouse farther up the coast had made this one worthless. She offered her $9, and the place was hers. A few men at the harbor laughed and said a woman alone had bought herself nothing but wind and ruin. Yet as she stepped through the heavy door into the cold, salt-scented tower, she felt something waiting high above in the lantern room, something long sealed away that would not only change her own days, but would reach back into the heart of Misty Point and give the settlement back what it had nearly forgotten it once possessed. Settle in, and let us tell you the story of Isabel Rowe. If this story finds you standing at the edge of something others have already walked away from, we would be grateful if you shared your thoughts in the comments below. Isabel had grown up in a small coastal village where her mother taught her that strength was measured not by what one kept, but by what one gave when others had nothing. She learned to listen to the wind and the sea, to mend nets, and to sit quietly with those who had lost men to the water. When she met her husband, she recognized the same quiet way of measuring worth. They came to Misty Point together, drawn by the promise of steady work at the harbor. After he was taken by a winter storm, she tried to hold to those ways, taking in sewing from the widows and gathering their children for lessons when the weather kept them from the small school. Victor Lang came calling one afternoon while she mended sails behind her cabin. He offered her a low price for the land. When she refused, whispers began that her door welcomed too many strangers and that her lessons made the young question the order of things. The Harbor Council gave her 7 days to leave or face arrest as a vagrant. On the 7th morning, she sold the last of her husband's tools, locked the cabin, and walked the cliff path with her carpet bag and $9. The old lighthouse stood silent against the gray sea, its white paint faded and its iron railing rusted by salt. She spent 3 days clearing broken glass and sweeping the tower steps. On the 4th morning, while cleaning the lantern room high above the rocks, she noticed a section of the stone wall near the base of the great lens gave slightly under her hand. She pried at the loose stone with a rusted tool and found a narrow cavity. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth and sealed with wax, was a small iron safe no larger than a bread box. She carried it down to the keeper's cottage and worked at the lock with steady hands until it opened. Inside lay a leather-bound journal, a folded map of the coastline, and a small wooden box containing gold coins. The journal belonged to the first keeper of the lighthouse, a man named Thomas Hale. Page by page, Isabel read how Thomas had kept careful records of every ship that passed the point. He had discovered that Victor Lang's father had been sending ships too close to the rocks during storms to collect insurance money after they wrecked. Thomas had hidden the evidence in the safe, along with the gold left by grateful survivors he had helped rescue. He wrote that the lighthouse and the land around it had always been meant as a public beacon, not as property for any one man. Isabel sat for a long time with the journal open on the table. The discovery would not make her rich, but it held the truth that Misty Point had buried. Word of what she had found moved through the harbor like fog rolling in from the sea. The widows whose husbands had been lost on those ships came to the lighthouse first. Isabel showed them the journal. Together, they decided the truth belonged to the whole harbor. They called a meeting at the old meeting hall near the docks. On the evening of the meeting, Victor Lang arrived with 2 of his men, expecting to take control as he always had. Isabel stood at the front of the room with the journal in her hands. When Victor tried to dismiss her and claim the lighthouse land as his own, she opened the journal and read the entries Thomas Hale had written about the ships that had been deliberately wrecked. The room grew very quiet. Then one of Victor's own captains, a man who had once sailed for his father, stood up and confirmed that some of what was written was true. Victor Lang's face darkened. He turned and walked out of the hall without another word. His men followed him. After that night, the settlement began to change in quiet, stubborn ways. The widows and several harbor-men brought tools and timber. They began repairing the old lighthouse, cleaning the lens, and reinforcing the tower. They decided the lighthouse would once again serve as a public beacon and a place of shelter for anyone caught in a storm. Isabel gave the gold coins to the widows whose children needed warm coats and food through the winter. The small school was mended with what remained. Victor Lang's influence over the harbor slowly faded as more people remembered the old agreements about shared safety. Within the year, he sold his company and left Misty Point. The settlement did not celebrate his departure. It simply went on repairing what had been neglected. We began this story with a woman of 28 who had been cast out with $9 and who bought a forgotten lighthouse because it was the only door still open to her. What she found sealed inside the tower was not fortune for one life, but a reminder, written in faded ink and wrapped against the salt, that the worth of a settlement lies in the truths its people are willing to face together.